Okay, thank you, darling.
So that means on camera, I'm going to take my first bite ever to you, the camera audience, out there in internet land of Spam and Subi.
Woohoo!
Do you have enough for the class?
Okay.
Everyone up!
Okay, this is how I get people to be on my panels. I bribe them with food. Exactly. Yeah. And this is how we know I am Asian.
More particularly Filipino. I mean...
have you been to Marianne's house when she makes food?
I mean, I will invite myself to the next gathering. That's what's going to happen here. So
I am still really mad. I missed your Sri Lankan New Year meal.
It'll come around next year.
Okay.
that's a yearly thing. So
yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this panel of More Than a Sidekick, expanding the visibility of Asian American creators in comics.
Ooh, that was a typo on that.
Characters and creators.
Yes, that was
Characters
a
and
typo. We're
creators.
just going to ignore that on the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Sorry, and we're also live streaming, guys. Say hi to everybody on Twitter.
Hi,
Twitter.
Hello, Twitter.
Hi, Twitterland. So, in this panel, Asian Americans have often been regulated to the role of sidekicks in superhero movies. But the new generations of creators and characters are successfully changing the narrative. Isn't that so? This panel will examine the evolution of Asian American representation in comics, both on and behind the page, and how these characters and their Asian American creators are finding their own footing in the spotlight. So, once again, good evening. My name is Natalia Roxas of Filipino Kitchen. I know, what the hell am I doing here when I am in the food industry, right? See, connection. Michi made some spam subi. I mean, that's clearly a great connection. But at the same time, there's a lot of parallels between the comic book world and the food world. A lot of the language and just interchange, just change it up. So right now we're going to be introducing our first panelist, Jean Ha.
It is delicious. It really is delicious.
So, Jean, please introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Gene. I am a comic book artist mainly, but recently have dove into writing with my book May. Before that, I spent about 24 years working for DC and Marvel, starting out with some Green Lantern work, moving on to some X-Men work, and then a lot of Justice League, Starman, and other stuff. Most famous for Top 10 with Alan Moore, who, while you're working with him, is charming and scarily brilliant and very inspiring. My new book is called May, and it's about two girls from the Midwest because I know a lot about the Midwest.
Next up is Draven. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Draven. I'm a writer for Comcastity and Newsarama and Women Write About Comics, which you should definitely check out. And I used to be an editor at Collaboration, which you might have heard of, and I'm just excited to be here.
Next up is Then I want to go steal his shirt though. I mean, really.
It's alright, I'll steal your shoes. Hi everyone, I'm Martell. I am adjunct faculty and also director of the UIC Asian American Resource and Cultural Center. I'm currently working on a piece that I'm submitting to the Journal of Graphic Novels and Comics, focusing on Asian American representation in comic books. Fun fact, like Wonder Woman, I was born in an island, the Philippines, but instead of being gifted superpowers, I was gifted with wittiness and charm. So that's what's up.
But he did like riding giant kangaroos as a kid and tying up other people.
Pretty much. Especially that Mark away. Yeah.
So it's going to be that kind of panel.
Yes, it will be. So lastly is Miss Marianne.
And I think that's not my bio, but I will introduce myself.
Oh.
So I'm Marianne Mohanraj. I'm an English professor at UIC. I work with Mark. I teach creative writing, fiction writing, pop culture. I do a course on writers of color in science fiction and fantasy. a long history in the field. I've been writing for 25 years. I founded Strange Horizons, which is one of the online prozines in science fiction and fantasy. I run the Speculative Literature Foundation, which is an arts org that gives grants to writers. I encourage you all to look it up and apply if you're a writer. My main connection to comics, aside from being a fan person, is not really comics, but superheroes. I write for Wildcards, which is George R.R. Martin's superhero series, which has been running for, I don't know, 20 some odd books. I came in with Fort Freak a few years back, and Wildcards was picked up last year for TV, so right now we're all just kind of crossing our fingers that they pick our characters for the TV show. My main superhero character, I write about a threesome most recently, and one of them is a cop who doesn't have any powers, one of them is a Joker who's essentially mutated by an alien disease, and then there's the Ace, who is a South Asian, Sri Lankan dancer who she has kind of like Sue Stormy powers. She can like make force fields when she dances, and she's sort of a pacifist, but she can also, hurl them at bad guys and things like that. So yeah, and I was born in Sri Lanka, so another island person. So
Didn't you recently win an election?
I ran for office, and I am now the smallest office around, which is the Oak Park Library Board. So.
Now, this may sound minor, but I'll just mention that my wife is a librarian, she follows these type of things. And there are other suburban libraries with people on their library boards who do not think libraries should exist and use every vote they have to try to make sure that their local library someday does not exist. So,
yeah, I do actually think it is a time when we need to be defending our libraries. So it's actually honestly kind of nerve-wracking. Like you run for office and like you're just some random person running for office, and if you win, you are now one of 7 people deciding that it's like a $13 million budget for the Oak Park Libraries, right? And so there's a lot of power handed over in these local municipal elections, which is, and I'm also a writer. I forgot to say that part of it. I'm a writer and an editor, and I have like 14 books. So that's most of my life is writing, actually. And I would love to write comics. I have a comic idea, but I would like to learn to draw first. So.
And up next, it's me! I know.
If you take anything from tonight, other than, of course, the obvious message of the subject headline, is that run for a library board and you will have millions of dollars to buy comic books with.
That suggestion, I think, maybe I should run for a library board then.
The librarians did keep telling us that we were not librarians, and we did not get to make decisions like that, but content, like
but
what
we
they
can
want,
make
but
friends with them.
we could. We're the influence.
Or that's you, right?
That's right.
So this is me, and as I said, I work in the food world, and as Michi, same as Michi, I am a nerd of all things. So I do belong to multiple fandoms, but at the same time, I would actually want to take this time to talk about some rules and kind of set some expectations. Oh yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. The star.
No, it is a panel of people. So.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Last but not least.
Last but not least, it is Friday. It is after 8 p.m. on a Friday night on the first day of C2E2. Hi, I'm Michi Trota, also nerd of all things. A lot of the things that I do now are directly Marianne's fault.
The cycle.
It is a cycle because I, thanks to taking class with Marianne back in my aborted graduate school days, I really got to be very active in nerd culture, even though I've been a nerd my whole life. Some of the things that I do, I am the president of the board of organizers for Chicago Nerd Social Club. I am an essayist, an editor, a community organizer. I am the managing editor for Uncanny, a magazine of science fiction and fantasy. We won our first Hugo Award last year. I became the first Filipina to actually win a Hugo Award. And there are three 3 Filipina Hugo Award finalists and several Asian American, Asian Hugo finalists all on the list this year, so that makes me super happy to be involved in a lot of the community building here. And in my spare time, I dress up in cosplay and I light shit on fire.
So, if the White Walkers come for Chicago, you want to be on Team Michi.
Definitely on that one. So I just would want to tell people that if they have any questions at all, please hold it off to the end of the panel. And we do have a microphone in the middle so we can address those questions and we will allot those times. So I think we can go and proceed to our lovely panelists. So one of the questions is, why did we get into comics, and who were the first Asian and API comic characters or creators you found, and why did you connect with their stories?
Ooh.
Wow, this is really heavy, because now I have to think about it too.
I have to admit, the first comic that I remember reading was Amethyst Princess from Caramel. Which is surprisingly good, but I was about 10 and she was definitely not Asian American, so that was that. But she was, I mean, in the realm of superhero comics, Amethyst Princess of Gemerald was kind of already a little bit of a departure, and I feel like even back then I was born in 71, so this would have been like around 1980. I think things were already sort of starting to break away from what you think of as the standard Superman, etc. mold, right? So.
My exposure, I think, being a queer Asian man, originally was Samurai from Super Friends.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And
I didn't even think about that.
yeah, there were these characters that they created to kind of have token, Native American, Asian, Black Vulcan, and I think they had El Dorado, which is a Mexican cartoon superhero. So that was my first exposure to that. I really didn't relate more to Samurai. I related more to Wonder Woman, just because I'm obsessed with her. And I think that, as a queer individual, you tend to be drawn to this character, and she's a symbol for many individuals, whether you're queer or female. So I think that was my first superhero connection. Was your question also creators as well, or just?
Yeah, it says, who were the first Asian or APA comic characters and or creators you have found, and why did you connect to their stories?
Yeah, I started collecting comics in maybe like 84, 85 when DC was doing the Crisis, and back then I wasn't very aware of the racial identity of creators, but I think when the 90s hit, Jim Lee, Jiha was there, Will Portacho, which I didn't even know was Filipino, but is.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then Greg Pak as well. I think 90s, early 2000s when I became aware of such creators out there.
Yeah, I have to revise my answer because I remembered a couple earlier ones. So, my first comics, so Sri Lanka is a colonial country, right? Colonized by the British, which means that I grew up reading a lot of British stuff because, like Famous Five, Secret Seven, because that was what my dad had loved. And so I read Asterix and I read Tintin. So Tintin is actually one of my first comics that I read, and it's horribly colonialist. And I actually have a comic on my office door with Tintin with this terrible expression on his face, and it says Tintin discovers Edward Said, which is Orientalism. He wrote Orientalism anyway. So that, but I think the other thing is, of course, that the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are huge epics in South Asia, and they have been. It is like South Asia's equivalent of like the King Arthur stories or something like that, but more so because it's also religious and it's a huge thing, and it's been made into television series and so on. And one of the things is comics, and so like I had comics of the Ramayana when I was very little. They came from India, right? So,
Jean or Draven?
Okay. So I was born in '69. So there was a long period before I really discovered any characters or creators who I knew were Asian, creators I didn't know if they were Asian or not, usually because the Filipino names are very racially ambiguous. Yeah, they sound Spanish or something like that, or Los Bertaccio sounds Californian, but he is very passionately Filipino, and he's very passionately a supporter of Filipino comics arts, and actually, for instance, trying to get Filipino artists to like not draw people with little tiny noses if they're supposed to be Filipino and stuff like that, like little tiny manga noses. So the first chance I really got to experience Asian comics beyond just like the very bad comic strips in the Chicago Korea Times, was, they were just like very goofy. But beyond that, manga. And just Frank Miller began talking in interviews about how he loved manga and how it influenced Daredevil, which I was a huge fan of during his first run. So then I had my mom drive me to from South Bend to Chicago when she went on trips there, and stop at a Japanese bookstore. I couldn't read anything. I just looked for the book with the prettiest pictures, and I tried to pick up one book that, which it was a little bit mind-blowing, because you'd have like something that looked very science fiction, then you'd have something personal drama, then you'd have something very, very weird and obsessive about panties. And then something about baseball. And it's like, how do you make a comic book about baseball? And it's like, has anyone here read or seen like a Japanese baseball comic or manga? Yeah. This blew my mind where they had all these tropes where it's just like, depending on what direction the ball's flying, it's coming towards you, away from you, up in the air, the shape of the ball distorts. And it's like, wait a minute, the shape of an object can distort? And I couldn't figure out the rules for why the ball distorted that way. It's like, this is genius, it works, and I don't know why. And then, of course, Akira came out. Those few mangas I picked up in Chicago had the most beautiful architectural drawing I'd ever seen, which helped make me a guy who's famous for doing backgrounds, despite the fact that I hate drawing. It helped make good stories sometimes. I learned that from manga. And then, of course, we had the burst of people who came up a few years before me, like Los Bertaccio, who I didn't realize was Asian either until I met him, Jim Lee, and Jay Lee, and all those type of guys. And this made my life so easy in that the most famous American comic book artist in the world who wasn't in a Levi's commercial was Asian American, and just people assumed that an Asian American guy is a comic book geek. So I have never had my geek cred challenged as an adult. It's very, very odd, because people talk about being multi-spectral, everything, omniversal geeks. I am not one of those people. I do not watch enough TV. I do not know, I do not read science fiction on a regular basis and stuff like that. And so many people are better geeks than me in so many ways, and they're getting geek checked all the time. It's like, you're so much better being a geek than me. Why is this happening? Anyway, that was my experience. Oh, also, I should mention one more thing. It's also the very weird experience I have. I've become huge fans of a comic book artist with a very, very, say, Irish-sounding name or something like that. Like this guy who drew Scott Pilgrim. Wait a minute, you're Asian? So, anyway.
Get your cracker.
Any X-Men fans here? Alright, it is a truth universally acknowledged that the X-Men member with the best fashion sense is Jubilee. And so when I was a kid, I loved Jubilee. I loved the X-Men. But I didn't get into reading comics until actually after the Avengers movie came out, which is pretty recent and also pretty embarrassing. Let's take a quick poll. Raise your hand if you've seen a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. Okay, it's almost literally everyone in the room. Okay, now raise your hand if you've seen in a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie someone of the same race and the same gender as you for more than an hour on screen. Okay, just for those at home, there was only like 5 hands up in there, and they were white men. I love Marvel characters. Now is a very bad time to love a lot of things Marvel for. I love Marvel characters, and I got really into reading Marvel comics after the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, and I discovered this character. Who can tell me if you know who she is?
Okay, it's Nico.
It's Nico from Runaways. And I was blown away because in Runaways, you have a character, a guy, Alex, who thinks he's the leader, but everyone knows that the de facto leader is actually Nico. And here I was seeing an Asian American woman as the leader of a superhero team, which is like the coolest thing. And it makes you wonder, what if Steve Rogers was Hoppa? What if Natasha Romanoff was Hoppa? Like, what if all these characters that we see on screen for hours in 18 movies over 10 years, what if we saw some of them as Asian American heroes? So, yeah, I really love comics. Marvel was kind of the gateway drug. And
Is she cast Asian in the show that's coming out?
We don't know yet.
They've
Nothing else I've seen.
Maybe not I'm pretty sure they cast it, but I'm just curious to know whether they stuck true to the race of the character.
How about you, Michi?
Split my time between Batman and the X-Men when I first got into comics. Batman, I actually got more into Batman because of the animated series in the 90s. Kevin Conroy is the definitive Batman forever and ever. I will fight you on this. But with the X-Men, because there were more variety of characters. When I got into comics, I was finding more variety of characters in the X-Men and in Marvel. I was just gravitating towards that more than I was gravitating toward DC. I sort of switched on and off over the course of, 20 plus years of reading comics. And before I even met Ghibli, the first Asian character who I noticed in the X-Men was Psylocke. So imagine my feelings on finding out that Psylocke originally was not actually Asian. She had been a white British woman whose mind was put into the body of an Asian woman because, as actually Chris Claremont and Ghibli had talked about years later, they decided to keep, this was something that was originally going to switch back. They decided to keep her in this because they liked the storyline. It made Psylocke stand out more than when she was a white British woman with purple hair who had a pink psionic knife. I don't know what else needed to stand out other than that, but apparently putting the mind of a white British woman into the body of an Asian assassin. And with that body swap, there were a couple of issues where she actually talked about how she was picking up personality traits of the original body's owner, as in hitting on Cyclops in front of Jean Grey, and then later apologizing to Jean and going, "Oh, I'm sorry, that was Quanon in the back of my head making me do that." It says a lot. I think it says a lot when you realize, like, that's the idea that having to put a white woman in the body of an Asian woman, which is the opposite of what they did to Ghost in the Shell. It says a lot about what they think about how seeing Asian people is the same as seeing something other. It's not usual, it's unusual. It is going to make you stand out more because, oh, why would we see more Asians in the page? That was something that I never really realized had impacted how I wrote my own fiction until years later. I wrote an essay where I was actually kind of unpacking some of these things, realizing that in my own fiction, I had never written fiction about any Asian American characters. They were all white characters. Even when I was writing fan fiction and Mary suing myself into stuff, I was idealizing myself as a white woman. It's kind of a shocking thing, and that doesn't mean that I love comics any less. I love them dearly. I get so much out of it. I've been collecting comics for forever, and the only reason I don't go to the store every Wednesday anymore is because I do too many things.
In which, I'm going to go piggyback from what you said, Michi. So you have pointed out really key things over there. So, and the undertones of whitewashing, white saviorism, Orientalism. So since it's such a big issue on TV and movies, is this also an issue in the comic book world?
I feel like comics are doing slightly better at this, actually. I mean, like we've had, Silk became a character in Marvel. You have, the new Superman with Jean Yang. Superman is he's a Chinese man. You've had more, I think, more representation both on the page and behind the page. It feels like it's also because what we had before, the bar was set so low. I feel like any improvement feels like a big step, and I don't know how much of that is a skewed perception of things. I mean, like, I found Jean's work several years ago, and I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing, this is awesome. I'm like totally fangirling, actually getting DM now. And it's something where it makes a huge difference being able to see that not just on the page, knowing that there are more Asian Americans who are actually writing these characters, because it's putting, I think, a really hard to quantify value of perspective into those characters.
So in original, actually, before, I'm sorry to cut, like, is anybody going to add on to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think historically, as our title has shown, Asian Americans have always been the sidekick, or the villain, or the caricature of the
It's like
title.
Mandarin.
Yeah. And I think there has been some movement when it comes to better representation, maybe in the past 5 or so years. And this is my argument for the article I'm writing, is that these successful characters that exist now are legacies of white existing characters. So if you go back, one slide with New Superman. You have New Superman who comes from the white Superman. You have Silk who comes from the white Spider-Man. You have Amadeus Cho who comes from white Hulk. So my argument when I'm writing this article is that these characters are successful because they come from white legacies. Can one make an argument that, a character that doesn't come from a white character legacy be successful? I don't know.
So I'd like to talk about Miss Marvel.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know a ton about this, but I was reading an article that the author wrote, and she was talking about how they did not expect this to do well, right? So they, she kind of set out, and she was like, this is going to be, 13 issues, and then it'll be gone. And she said it was actually very freeing to be in that position of, I get to write it exactly the way I want to write it, because I don't think it's going to be picked up and continued. And then what she was surprised to find is that it came out at kind of exactly the right time to tap into not just a conversation about Muslims in the Middle East and America's reaction to that, etc., but also other young adults of faith. A lot of them who were growing up in conservative environments and struggling with navigating that. And so Miss Marvel ended up tapping into a much broader audience than even the author anticipated, and is part of why it's successful. I mean, it's also just a great, great comic, I think. I think she did a terrific job with it. So it's, I feel like that's sort of an unusual, it doesn't quite fit into the narrative of some of the, or the patterns of the other things you were talking about, right?
But she does come from Carol Danvers.
Yeah.
There's the legacy that's there, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like even the add-on, Ryan Cho.
Yeah, and even she, of course, came from an alien who happened to look exactly like a blonde white guy.
Yeah. So,
They're all aliens? Really? They're all like blonde?
Not all of them
white
are
guys?
blonde. Not all of them are blonde.
Oh.
I mean, Katana, Suicide Squad, she's very popular now, right? She doesn't come from a white legacy, but she's created by a white individual. So, I don't know, I'm still playing with that argument. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
What about Monsters? That was up there.
Yeah.
That's not tapping into anything else, right?
I'm not sure, and Michi knows how I feel about that title, so I can't really comment on that. Yeah.
Actually, Draven, you're a comic book critic. I mean, how does this all look to you from that point?
I definitely am concerned a lot about how few Asian Americans are hired just across all the different companies, Marvel, DC, Image. I keep kind of a running list of Asian women that are creators of titles right now. So I just compiled a short list of people that are on recognizable series like Marjorie Liu and Han Solo, Mariko Tamaki and Hulk, Ming Doyle in Spells and Wheels, Amy Cho in Poison Ivy, and several others like Fiona Staples and Saga, which I know a lot of people are fans of. I think there's still this hesitancy from a lot of the publishers to hire Asian Americans as writers, and I think that's really concerning. I think a lot of characters of color who are favorites of ours, not just Asian, but across all ethnicities, a lot of them have been created by white men, and like that's concerning just from a standpoint of who's getting to tell the stories that we treat as normal, that we treat as universal. But it's also just concerning from a hiring standpoint. So.
Well, in that case, in discussions about representation and diversity, the focus is often on the characters. But the creators and editors also play an important role. What are some barriers AAPI creators can face in the industry? How can we better support AAPI creators in the comic book world?
We're all looking at Gene
Yeah.
at this one.
I'm going to say I feel pretty, I don't feel like, okay. Again, I'm going to go back to the example of Jim Lee, having the most famous comic book artist in America at the time, be an Asian American guy, really blazed a trail for me. And I was just following a few years after him, but it helped a lot. The next thing that happened in his career that made a huge difference for Asian American men is that when the image artist broke away from Marvel, the one with the best business sense, which history has proven, was Jim Lee. So therefore, he was the one able to get the whole thing organized as a corporate entity. He was the one able to keep his division afloat and not getting sued by hockey stars for millions of dollars, like things like that. And then he's the guy who then got bought up by one of the top guys there. Now, keep in mind, this means there's a little bit of precedent for an Asian American editor, but especially for Asian American artists. Not so much for writers, though it's not like we're still considered kind of part of the club, frankly. It doesn't apply as much to Asian American women because, especially historically, a lot of these guys, and I would say in my youth, a lot of these guys were incredibly awkward with women, even if they're coworkers, and it's not supposed to be a dating situation. Let me see. And then you get the other thing, and this is the thing where I cannot get to the roots of it. So Asian American women not help so much, and also just I still am trying to figure out why it's such a problem to allow in African American creators of either male, female, whatever. And also why you have these, there will be occasional superstars. I was just hanging out with, I am the worst person in the world with names, famous guy who I run on X Factor, Larry Strode. Yeah, who's a huge idol of mine, one I was breaking into the industry. And there's all these brilliant creators who are African American, who just kind of get burnt out by what they're facing in the industry, and they try to be polite and not complain in public, but you can kind of just see this emotional toll that being in the industry is forcing upon them that I'm not going through, and I think a lot of women are going through something very similar, and I consider myself in a somewhat privileged position compared to a lot of the crap, just the crap a lot of people are going through. I feel very supported, and I don't know, again, it's like my thing about being the limited geek guy I am, not being treated like a fake geek boy, and then watching people who aren't like me, who are better geeks, getting treated like crap. And it's a little bit frustrating, and I want to do my best to be an ally with people who have all these wonderful new ideas and experiences and stories to tell, and aren't being allowed in, or being in and trying to tell the story is such an emotionally painful, horrible experience. And you can it's like asking an Iraq war veteran about, so what was it like over there? And you see in the eye of I'm just going to go out and say, like Larry Stroman, you say something like that, and he's a little bit hesitant. You can just kind of see this pain in his eyes. And a lot of guys like that. Kyle Baker is one of the greatest, he's another guy who hugely inspired me when I broke into the industry. And there's like, I don't know what the whole experience is, but I mean, there's just pain in his eyes sometimes when you just kind of ask him about stuff, and I don't know the whole story. I want to know more.
You know, and I think that applies sort of broadly, not just in comics, but in just genre writing in general. I think that, you know, whatever barriers there are for Asians in the field, I think it is notably worse for Black writers, right? Just from talking to them and just the things that they go through, the way their work gets treated, I think is, they just have more barriers shoved in their way. I feel like Asian American, a lot of the barriers are actually, I think some of it comes from within the culture, right? So like I used to run the South Asian Lit Festival, Critic, here in Chicago, and it was a 4-day festival, and the first time we did it, we polled the attendees, and they said, you know, like, what brought you to the South Asian Literature Festival? And something like 95% of them said they were doctors or lawyers who really wanted to be writers, right? And so there's, you know, there is a certain model minority thing, there's a certain cultural pressure on immigrants and first-generation people to go into safe, financially lucrative professions. I think part of why we are seeing this incredible flowering in the arts is because we are getting into the second, third. I mean, some people have been here longer than my people have, but you know, like, but we're seeing just there's more space, I think, without the immediate immigrant anxiety, right? So.
Can I throw out a couple questions? How many of you have seen at least one episode of either Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or 13 Reasons Why? Wow, okay, almost everybody in the room. One thing that's really cool about both of those shows is that the co-showrunner of each of those shows is an Asian American woman. And what's really cool is that if you look at, for example, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you have Chloe Bennett and Ming-Na Wen, like, very prominent in the show. You know, they're the co-stars, they are recurring roles, and in 13 Reasons Why, 2 of the supporting characters who recur in every episode and have a major role in the story are Asian. And I don't think it's a coincidence that when you have an Asian showrunner, that casting looks different. And like, it's really cool, for example, in 13 Reasons Why, to see just in the background, in all the busy high school hallway scenes, you see lots of Asian and Black and Latino students in the hallways. And I really think that if an Asian woman were not a co-showrunner of that show, it might not look that way. Casting might have not looked like that, just for extras. So I think with comics, there is, and there should always be, from us as consumers, that question of, are the hiring behind the scenes, are they reflective of what we want to see? And like, I mean, off the top of your head, can you think of at Marvel or DC, like, Asian American women or Asian Americans who are editors or higher ups, VPs? You know, we have Sana Amanat, we have certain people in positions of influence, but I think without those people, maybe hiring would look really different in comics.
I'm just going to say, I mean, it does help that DC, for instance, having Jim Lee there, and on the Road Show, Fletcher Chu Fong, and stuff like that. But also, one of my assistant editors from the 90s became one of the, I think, assistant producers on the TV show Heroes. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember that.
I just wish we could forget a little bit of it.
And you know, to answer your question, I think it's a systemic factor. It does have a cultural influence. It does have issues of access for professionals. But to directly answer your question, I say support API creators, artists, titles. That's the only way that, you know, you're going to see numbers. It's all a numbers game as well. Break out of the traditional big two. Visit, you know, read independent comics. And, you know, if there are any students in the audience, and some of my students are out there, I would say consider not taking the medical route and consider something that's more creative, you know. I know it is a challenge, a cultural expectation.
You can do both.
Yeah, you can do both. You know, you can be creative and scientific as well. And then take a course that is not the traditional course you would take. I'm teaching comics in society next fall, so consider registering for that and demand courses that have Asian American focus, because otherwise it's not gonna you're not gonna be exposed to that.
I think that makes the point about visibility. I mean, Gene's really been hammering that point home, I think, without even really calling it out.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about, like the classes are there. It makes a difference when we can see people who are like us in these industries that we want to break into, whether it's on the page or as the name of the writer, the artist, the editors. We have a harder time imagining ourselves actually being in those places if we don't see that we're already there. Because there's a lot of pressure that comes with wanting to be the person who is going to break down that barrier, because those barriers are really considerable. And then it is also the idea of, I think what is important about all of us being on a panel like this is that we are visibly Asian Americans from a wide swath of backgrounds with a lot of different areas of expertise, but we get to be up here talking, and I think that also makes a difference. Like when you can see when you're sharing web comics, like I'm totally going to plug this because Suzanne is the writer, she's in the audience. Her partner on the comic, Wendy Zhu, does the amazing artwork. Like, Mark's point is really important. You find stuff that you like and you support it. I am, banging a huge drum about Monstrous and Miss Marvel being in the Hugos this year because it's really, really important. It's not to denigrate the other works there because they're all freaking amazing. Black Panther is nominated for a Hugo. I don't know who I'm going to vote for. It's very tough. It's a hard one. The fact that I would love for us to be able to say that there is so much for us to choose from in comics that we can't reasonably be expected to spend that much money.
Can I say one thing I'd love to see that we don't have yet is that I would like an Asian American comics workshop. So I'm looking at you. And in part because of something that happened to me, I think about 2 years ago when they sent to all the Wildcards authors, they said, we're opening up to pitches for a Wildcards comic. And I thought about it and I was like, I don't know anything about writing a comic, but like I could have pitched for it. And I just was sort of at a point where I'm like, well, I've never studied it. I don't know anything about going, and I didn't pitch, but I could have. And I think there's a good chance they would have taken it if I had, right? And so I would like a workshop, please, that I can sign up for.
You are a library board.
I mean that could definitely happen.
And there is a college professor sitting right next to you.
What a coincidence. Actually, I'm going to go through this last question that you guys, and this is not scripted, going off script here. So since each of you have been in a place of, as you said, privilege and access to all these different resources, are you hypercritical of your fellow Asian Americans in this comic book world? And if they do represent themselves as a little bit more whitewashed or having that too white of a mentality, how do you call that out?
Okay, let me
And
bring
this
up.
is the last question before our Q&A.
I mean, answer everyone just, we can move forward in history. We'll start off in the deep past of my childhood. Okay, so the geeks of my generation, male, female, all races who read comics and stuff like that, had a almost all-white cast of characters we were reading about. And we loved comics, and we read comics about these white characters, but we saw some aspect of it, like seeing Peter Parker's experience as an outsider, or the X-Men, who were isolated first in the 70s before everyone else. But we saw something in their experiences where it related to what we wanted, and what we saw in ourselves and wanted to try to achieve ourselves and all that type of stuff. But this means that for my generation, what you'll often hear from female creators, from creators sometimes of color or something like that, is that, why do people need diversity? And it's not said very loudly, but it is said. I grew up, I was a girl, and now I'm a famous female creator, and I didn't relate to female characters, I related to, whoever, Peter Parker, whatever. Because we didn't have any options. We got filtered in a way so that people who were looking for something that looked like themselves dropped out. And the only ones left were people who were willing to suffer through characters that didn't look like them and get used to it. And then when you have people who grew up with that, it's a bit stunning for me to see how important this is. I got to sit next to G. Will Wilson at a comic shop signing about a month ago in Seattle. And every other person who came up was somebody who was saying, it's so important to me that you created Ms. Marvel. And I had never seen anybody who looked like me and had experiences like me in a comic book or in any type of fiction at all, popular fiction at all. And every other person who came up was crying and smiling and saying, thank you so much. And G. Willow was just like, thank you so much. And it was like, you could see she'd been through this for quite a while, for a few years, and it still was like, she was feeling so humbled by how important it was to people. And for me, watching it from the side, it's like, wow, I did not realize how important representation was to so many people. I mean, seeing these many people smiling and crying at somebody for like 2 hours in a row was like, wow. And it's like, it's kind of an example for me, like, I could cry a little harder. So yeah, I mean, when you say like, I could create an Asian American workshop, it's kind of like, if I did, I would be sitting up there in the front saying, I'd like some suggestions on what I should be doing next and what I should be doing better. So, anyway.
And that's actually not a bad attitude to have about it either. I mean, I'm in my late 30s. I'm 39. I kind of feel like I'm in that weird sort of transitional period where a lot of these discussions were starting to happen. But when I was growing up, it was I'm going to take what I can get, and I need to be tough about it. I can't whine about it. I can't cry about it because what kind of power do I have? It's not going to make a difference. I just need to soldier through it. And it creates that feedback mentality where you start looking at other people like they're weak for wanting more. Because you don't want to be disappointed. It's that whole, if I want more, I'm going to be disappointed because that's what I've learned. And it is such a painful thing to admit to yourself that what you had and what you loved still was not it wasn't filling that hole. There was a hole there to begin with that I spent decades trying to tell myself that hole wasn't there. And there's only so far that can go. I mean, I can totally understand why people do that thing where you have whitewashed your sense of self, where you're saying that, oh, it's not that big of a deal, just tough it out, find your own thing, make your own thing, whatever. And it's a way of trying, I would ask people who are doing that, to like, why should you have to? Why should you have ever had to do any of this? And why should you want anybody to go through the same sort of painful thing that you have put yourself through? Nobody should have to go through that. It doesn't mean that you're a terrible person for having lived that way, but it is okay to admit that it hurt and that it makes you feel powerless, because you have to admit that that's an issue to begin with before you can actually address it.
There's kind of a conditioned response in me where, like, when I was a child, when an Asian American superhero would show up, I would think to myself, oh God, what stereotype have they taken in that?
Exactly that.
But I mean, I went to a panel at MLA 20 years ago, and I was a baby writer at the time, and so I was pretending. There are all these writers with books up there, and one of them said, and talking about what Western publishing wanted, and it was easier to sell an arranged marriage novel than something else, and etc. But then one of them said, and I think this is really true, that, well, but you have to write your arranged marriage novel and get it out of your system anyway, right? Because it is a concern, it is an issue and a trope in our culture, and a lot of us did in fact struggle with this, and my parents were, sending my picture to Sri Lanka when I was in high school, and, planning to set up my marriage, and, so I feel like, I don't know, like it's a dual thing. Like, on the one hand, like, a lot of writers are gonna have to, and creators of all kinds are gonna have to, like, move through the stereotypes, move through these basic tropes, figure out their own take on it, and then we'll see what they do for their next project, right?
Can I just throw something out there really quickly? And this is like the most important lesson I have for anybody who's trying to break in as a writer. Find the thing, figure out the story that you wish you could buy off the shelf that is not being produced right now, and write it, create it. If you have that creative urge, do that. And even if you fail, and most writers will of course not make it as far as they want to, even if you fail, you'll have written a story that means something to you, and for the other people who discover it, it will mean a lot. those people who find it will be like, you'll find out there are a lot of other people who also wish that story had existed, and once you make it, it will mean something. And the other hand, also for the things that do break through, this is the story of things that break through, where somebody made the thing that didn't exist, that they wish it existed, and it turns out there are a lot of people who find it and then want it. And it creates new possibilities for stories.
Yeah, I'm gonna go jump in. So we have the last 10 minutes of it for a Q&A. So who has a question?
You don't have to be shy.
Go ahead.
Does it work?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Test. Oh, I was just curious, like what communities have you guys tapped into that has been helpful for growing, whether it's Asian American or some sort of different community that's been helpful online or just in person to help, grow yourself as a brand?
I run Desi Lit, which is a South Asian lit org, so www.desilit.org. We've done festivals, we've done writing workshops. We have a book club that meets in Logan Square every month and has for 10 years. So that's really, I think it's important to read and discuss what other people are doing.
Actually, I'm gonna go interject into that one just for that specific question. Like for us, I moved into a space of, comic books, to food, to academia, to like social networking, to just like in different facets, just because I do such a multi-dimensional career path that nobody believes it exists. So basically just knowing where you move on those spaces and you really maximize that moment of talking to these people, find those common grounds, and then you would go and say like, oh my God, me too. Like yesterday, I just met Mark yesterday, and literally that moment, I didn't know he was Filipino, number one. Number two, I just saw like he loves Wonder Woman, and I'm like, we gotta be friends.
She was gonna steal my shirt already.
Exactly, as he's trying to sell my, steal my shoes. So you just move in those different spaces, and you get that support. Then you reach out and you make the genuine connection, because people would know if you are just using them. If you're just like, if I'm just gonna call Michi to be like, I have a favor, instead of genuinely building that relationship, people will know. So.
Yeah. I think Twitter. I've had really fantastic experiences on Twitter, just because there's so many hashtags that have been active. AA Iron Fist was fantastic to just participate in and even just read. Whitewash Out was a really fantastic discussion about Asian American representation in media. Following those hashtags, and you don't even have to participate, but they can bring you to, they can make you aware of creators who you weren't aware of before. They can introduce you to concepts, like being part of geek culture has been such a big thing for me because it has introduced me to so many terminologies and frameworks that have allowed me to actually understand issues of representation. I learned about intersectionality because of being part of geek spaces. I learned more about the model minority myth and about what it means to whitewash your identity, because these are things that people are talking about in geek spaces. So if you find a community where these things are being talked about openly and honestly, I will plug for Chicago Nerd Social Club. We're really great about creating an inclusive space where we expect people to be accountable for their actions. Microaggressions are not things that are tolerated. We have an active moderator group. You find communities where they are talking about the things that you want to talk about and where people are behaving in a way that makes you feel comfortable about being vulnerable and being able to talk.
I think the key word is network. You have to network, and whether it's social, or digital even, or even academic, just find a support group that is willing to respect who you are, your identity, and also your interests. I think that's the key thing.
I'm sorry, I just want to say for network, I might phrase it as show up, right? Because I think when I hear network, I think like business networking, and it all sounds very dry. And one of the things that really became clear to me during the campaign, actually, for Library Board, is I booked myself to go to like a community event every night for 4 months, right? It was exhausting. I would not recommend anyone keep up that pace. But I met all these people and I talked to them and I found out what their concerns were, what their interests were, and it was absolutely key to just kind of figuring out, like, well, where do I fit into this? What can I offer? What holes are there that I can fill, right? And so I think find out what's available in your area, and then go to some things. I mean, I also spend a ton of time on Facebook personally, so my adjunct is not Twitter. I find Twitter overwhelming. I'm on Facebook, and you're all welcome to follow me. I'm almost at my friend limit, but everything I post is public, and so like that's an incredible resource if in-person stuff is not your thing, or even if it is.
Okay, we're gonna run to the. Okay.
Local comic shop Valkyries, I'm trying to be very supportive of what they do, and also every once in a while I go ask one of them very confidentially, treat me like an idiot and explain this thing to me and why it's important, and then they do, and they pretend that I'm not an idiot and like I'm being rhetorical, but I am. And they're very helpful.
Next question.
Hi. So first of all, thank you guys so much. We did touch a little bit on what we can do as consumers to help with AAPI representation, but what do you think allies could do to help with the representation of AAPI characters and editors and writers as writers?
Make space for, help make space for people to actually talk with their own voices. Like, if you're a writer, if you're a white writer and somebody comes to you saying, hey, I would love for you to do a piece on, can you write a piece about whitewashing in media, or whitewashing in Ghost in the Shell, or cultural appropriation in Iron Fist. Say, hey, I actually know somebody who would be really appropriate to write that. It's not saying that you don't have anything to say, but understanding whose voices tend to dominate the landscape when those topics are not, when those topics happen to be about marginalized people. I think that applies across the board. Like, if somebody came to me and asked me to write something about genderqueer or trans representation, I'd be like, let me point you to somebody else. I have a vast Rolodex, and this is why showing up and networking is important. If you know people, and if you can open those doors, if you can use your privilege to open doors for people so that they can get those opportunities, that makes a huge difference.
Draven, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure, I would just say retweet women of color every day. If you are not a woman of color, you have an endless opportunity to be retweeting writers like Linthropy on Twitter, Ubeam Press on Twitter. These are writers who write for Femsplain or Women Write About Comics, and I would get in the habit of retweeting them and making sure that their voice is prominent. And I would also say, if you're part of any community, whether online or in person, and you know upcoming women of color writers, Asian American writers, invite them into that space, make room for them, and ask them, do they have ideas that they would like to pitch but haven't found an avenue to pitch yet, and see if you can connect them with an editor that would love to publish them.
I mean, I would also encourage, and personally, I would encourage you to include brown characters in your work, and just, do your homework, research, check it out with people, and if you get something wrong, be prepared to take your licks, that's how we all learn, right? So.
Yeah.
As an ally, I would also encourage you to stand with us when you see improper representation or lack of, be the voice, and fight along with us. I think being an ally is being part of the movement.
Thank you.
Don't let anyone at DC or Marvel hear I said this, but when you guys complain, they actually listen to
I think just to piggyback on all of those things, and as I said, I move in a lot of different spaces. Those are the exact same discussions that we have in the food industry. Try to be the only Filipino in a conference in the culinary world and saying that, oh my God, Filipinos, your food has finally arrived. survived. And my snarky self goes, yeah, since 1587. No, I mean, it was me and Sarah, but it was like, I was like, there was two of us, yay, but just to be, like, know your history, and that's why you become a better ally, that's why you become a better voice to the unheard, and that's why you create your own spaces for that. So, I'm gonna go move on to the next question, and this is the last two questions.
Oh no.
Go ahead.
I had 2 questions. Oh well.
Choose one.
Choose one.
Choose wisely.
I'll let you go first. All right. Because one of them might have sort of been covered by the last question. So I'll shift gears to the second question I was going to ask. So I'm writing a musical that's going into auditions next weekend. And it's a superhero musical. Actually.
Yeah!
The last superhero thing I ever expected.
I would like to audition.
I will talk to you after.
Sure.
It's going to happen in Chicago, of course. And something that happens in audition, I did sort of write characters with race in mind, but something that happens in casting in lots of different places. I've seen shows in a variety of theaters in a variety of cities, and one aspect of that is you cast the best people who show up. And I wonder, and that's an ethnic issue to a certain extent, because perhaps people with less opportunity to grow their craft don't have the opportunity to show their craft. And then that becomes a cycle. So I wonder if there's any way we can advocate for that in the comics world or in other worlds, in the television world. How do we encourage more, especially with the cultural issues that were mentioned that happen for many varieties of the Asian diaspora? Is that the right word that use of that word?
I'm gonna go jump into this just to wrap it up at this end. I think we all answered it this moment. I mean, not to be snarky.
Yeah.
We answered this is like show up, use our platforms, and also let us know about those things. Like Michi has been rotating our Twitter handles. Let us know those things because all of us here have our different platforms and networks to actually amplify all of them.
But can I add? I think there is also, you say you cast the best people who show up. I would say a step that often gets missed is a more active outreach pushing into communities. And so, for example, if you want South Asian actors, you can Google, there is a South Asian theater company in Chicago. You can get in touch with them, and you can be sure that their members know that you are casting, right? And that's, this is something that I think needs to be worked on across the board in many areas.
Yeah, I think that's you can't just open the door and expect people to walk in. You actually have to go do the work to invite them. You have to let people know that they are actually welcome and wanted, because so many of us are just used to assuming that we aren't. So that little bit of reassurance and that work to go out and say like, hey, I really want to see more people of color. I really want to see more non-binary people. I really want to see more queer people submitting, auditioning, whatever. You actually have to go to those communities and invite them and do what you can so that they know that you are being sincere. It's that extra little bit of work, but it makes a huge amount of difference.
Can I add something? John M. Chu for Crazy Rich Asians, he put out, like on YouTube and Twitter, we're looking for Asian American actors. Tweeted us like a 2-minute video of you, and he put like a script on the website, and so people would self-submit themselves, and a lot of these people don't have agents, they don't have the traditional channels, they're not dance students or theater students, they're just people on Twitter and YouTube, and that's really effective. I think if you use Twitter and YouTube and say, I'm looking for Asian actors, I'm looking for Asian dancers, put that out there, and make it as easy as possible for Asian Americans to pitch themselves through like a 2-minute video or just something that they can send to you directly.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the very last questions and like on hyper speed.
Whoever wants to audition, find me after the show.
Okay. I just want to say first thank you all. Keep doing the good work that you're doing because we're gonna need it. And I also want to say, kind of going off of what he was saying, so I grew up, I didn't know to have Asian pride because I didn't have Asian friends. I looked, I fangirled black and white characters in comics and everything else. And I also like to write, and I'm part of writing communities. So I ended up growing up a lot having to represent like all Asians to everyone and saying like, I think it's really important to have diversity within Asian characters. That said, I am in groups that say, like, some people say, write a character that can be any race and be anything, and then there's people who say never do that. You have to say when they're Asian and give them an Asian name. I don't have an Asian last name. And because people are just going to default to thinking that that character is white. So what is your thoughts on that?
Samuel Delaney says that he's a black gay science fiction writer, says the unmarked state is straight white man, right? And I think that's true. I think that in general, like if you just imagine like you're opening a book and it says, a doctor walks into the room, right? You're picturing probably a white male doctor, right? At least in this culture. Now, if you were in India, if you're in Japan, if you're, you're going to picture something different, right? But here, I do think that you kind of, if you don't state it, people will assume. You don't necessarily have to state it immediately. You can work that in a little later if you want to. But
yeah, it's really it's no different than saying that describing your character and giving them little marks, saying like, oh, this is somebody who has South Asian features, or the food they're eating. Like, I will stand for Sarah Kuhn's book Heroin Complex forever. The thing about Spam Musubi in that book is that she actually writes about, when she introduces her characters, one of the first things that the character talks about is her favorite food, and she talks about eating Spam Musubi with her best friend. That's before we even really get to any major character descriptions, but it's those little details that feel real as part of a particular kind of Asian American experience. Just talking about things that are normal to your experience. Like if I would write a character based on my upbringing, before I would even, I might say something about skin color, I might say something, but I would also say things about, in the kitchen, what does the kitchen smell like? What are the tchotchkes that we have on the mantelpiece? What are some of the things that I hate being dressed up in as a little kid, like those really super starchy white shirts. Hate those. But those little things are part of your character, and they shouldn't be different just because you are writing that for an Asian American character, or you're writing another character of color, because it shouldn't have to. If somebody reacts to that differently, like, oh, you're calling it out very specifically, and you're like, well, what about this white character who's walking around with her hand in a box of Lucky Charms? How is that any different? I think it's just making sure that we interrogate how the default affects how people see our work, and we can't really change that, but if we write honestly about who those characters are, that is part of writing our ethnic experiences into those characters.
Thanks for some. The most important bit of Asian American, well, I shouldn't say most important, but the most ground-shifting bit of Asian American representation for me in my life was Harold and Kumar. It was not a movie about being Asian American, but it was a character about every people, and just dopey stoner characters who was a very common trope. But because they're Asian American, it also was able to. It was not about being Asian American, but it was able to get into being Asian American from a totally different angle than, say, the Joy Luck Club or any other movie that's about, look, here are some Chinese people, or here are some Japanese people. But it was very culturally specific when they talk with their parents, or how it's different when they go up, they see a bunch of frat boys going crazy in 7-Eleven, and how it would have been different for some white guys, or when they see a cop, and how it's a little bit different for them. All these different experiences like that. It's all subtly different. And you can tell every man's stories, but by just showing that subtle difference, it's illuminating. And I'll just mention also, you heard me make the Get Out joke earlier today. I mean, just seeing these experiences that so many characters go through in a horror movie. But with that little tiny shift, where it's kind of like, the best thing that art can do is to change how you see the everyday world. And in that sense, Get Out was such an amazingly powerful piece of art for me. Anyway.
Yeah, and the particular is always going to be stronger than the generic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that being said, I would like to thank our panelists. And I would like to thank the audience.
This question I'd like to ask you guys. How many people out there are some type of creator as far like fiction writers, comic artists, anything like that?
Yeah!
Yeah. You guys, yeah, you can change the world if you have a chance to network afterwards, trading tips with each other, ask us questions, network with us in big giant circles, I'll hang out with you.
She has a table in Artist Alley!
So it's a little harder to ask there than it is here, so I'm going to hang out for a few minutes afterwards if you want to ask questions or just tell me to do something better.
Drinks?
Thank you very much for everybody. Thank you for coming and participating in this lovely panel. I wish we could have like 5 more hours of this discussion. Because like that was
You're doing a symposium!
oh my goodness, thank you. I'm sorry. FYI, I have been jet lagged, moving, and about to hop on a plane in less than 12 hours. Yeah, so forgive me about all of
You're
this.
overachieving the Asian stereotype right now.
Actually, I'm the model minority. If you haven't seen it, here I am. We have the very first Filipino food symposium happening in late fall, so stay tuned for that. And also, we're going to have our 3rd annual Filipino Food and Arts Festival here in Chicago at Logan Square. So we have exhibited live art. Everything is Filipino American or Asian American, or we even have exhibited our allies, and we're very inclusive. We always make sure that we have gender neutral bathrooms. We always have Asian American representation under the LGBTQ++ community. So everybody's welcome, everybody. Don't call up the venue and say, do I have to be Filipino to be here? No. You have to.
Do you want comic artists at your thing?
Actually, you know what? For one of ours, we've had somebody do live caricatures. So, but also, just hit me up on Twitter, on Instagram, Snapchat. If anybody, artists, Asian American, anybody, this is open. You love a Filipino, you're welcome. So, if you love us, you are very welcome to be in this, either participating, vending. More announcements are coming out soon. So thank you for that, Michi. And once again, thank you.